Ag Appropriations Subcommittee to order, and I want to begin by thanking Secretary Brooke Rollins for being here today. We appreciate it very much. Of course, today we're going to talk about the appropriation for next year on behalf of our incredible farmers and ranchers. Thanks to our network of family farms and ranches across this country, we have, I think, on the order of 16 million people are involved either directly or indirectly in agriculture. And unlike many industries, it's not just a few big businesses. It is a family-based network of farms and ranches, something that I believe the American people very much want to keep in place, not only because our farmers and ranchers produce the highest quality, lowest cost food supply in the world that Americans benefit from every single day. Every American benefits from every single day. But I truly believe that in this country we are dedicated to that network of family farms and restaurants, family farms and ranches, because it really is about the strength and vitality of rural America. I mean, think about it. That is the bedrock of rural economies, small communities across our whole country. And it's diverse. Think of agriculture in California versus in Louisiana, my state of North Dakota, New Hampshire. It's incredibly diverse, but for all those reasons, and then ultimately because food security is national security. And so when we talk about farm policy, and of course all the things you do at USDA, and we talk about how we're going to fund that, it's just incredibly important, and it touches every single American every single day. And sometimes we take it for granted. You know, I think it's kind of like when you come in the room, you flip the switch, you expect the lights to go on. We expect that same thing with our food supply. And it's not just food, it's food, fuel, and fiber, again, brought to us by this amazing industry, this ag industry, and the way we have it here, family-based. And we want to keep it that way, and we want to work very hard to bring the next generation in, right? I mean, it really is not only about sustaining the network we have, but bringing that next generation into farming and ranching as well. I want to thank you, Secretary, up front for recognizing that, for working very hard on it, for traveling the country and getting out there and talking to folks across the country that are involved in agriculture. And of course, recognizing that we needed the farm bridge assistance, the $12 billion that was provided, working with us, working with the administration, working with President Trump to make sure that that $12 billion was there to get our farmers and ranchers through a really tough time where they have high input costs and low commodity prices. And in the Working Families Tax Cut Act, we did provide enhancements to ARC PLC and to crop insurance, which our producers will see this year. But the marketing year, ag marketing year, doesn't end until October, so that they don't see that enhanced ARC PLC until that October timeframe. So that farm bridge assistance is incredibly important, and we've got more to do there. And I know you've said that, Madam Secretary, and we look forward to continuing to do more on that farm bridge assistance. One other thing I want to bring up before I turn to Ranking Member Shaheen and we dive into the numbers and the budget is I want to thank you for coming to North Dakota last year and then for supporting and working with us on precision ag and really for your incredible initiative on ag technology, ag tech, and developing the proving grounds, including us at Grand Farms and DSU, and with our tremendous ARS office out there, but recognizing, and Undersecretary Scott Hutchins said it very well when he was out in North Dakota not too long ago, and that is how do we help our farmers and ranchers be more profitable? And so when we talk about ag tech and these test sites or proving grounds and that kind of thing, it is about making our farmers and ranchers more profitable so they're around for the long haul, so we keep this network of family farms and ranches, and so we get that next generation in to carry on this great legacy. So again, thank you for being here. And with that, I will turn to Ranking Member Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Chair Hoeven, and thank you, Secretary Rollins, for being here today. And we're still hoping we're going to get you to New Hampshire. As you know, farms in New Hampshire are very different than farms in North Dakota. And so we would love to have a chance to show you what we are very proud of in New Hampshire, the agriculture that we practice there. I believe that all of us in this room can agree that this is a challenging time for farmers and for ranchers, as Senator Hoven laid out. Our producers are facing rising input costs, stubborn commodity prices, export market uncertainty, and a rapidly changing climate, including new pests and diseases that we're seeing in New Hampshire and across the country. Families in rural America are not immune or shielded from the affordability crisis that so many are facing, from housing to energy costs to the difficulty in starting and operating a small business. But rather than put the focus on these challenges and working to provide certainty where producers and communities are otherwise subject to so many forces outside their control, I remain concerned by the ways that the administration is instead injecting chaos into the system. Over the last year and a half, we have seen scores of canceled grants, including for programs that were helping small producers build out local supply chain infrastructure. We've seen haphazard tariff regimes, which have driven up food prices. We've seen major changes to key programs like the Section 502 Single-Family Housing Direct Loan Program without notice and comment opportunities that people usually expect. And now we have a war in Iran, which is driving up the cost of fuel and fertilizer. And through all of this, I remain concerned about what I'm hearing from farmers and communities in New Hampshire. Concerns about USDA's staffing capacity. What we're hearing too many people say is that they are walking into empty or near empty offices that USDA has occupied in the past. And I was disappointed to see that rather than tackling these challenges head on, the President's fiscal year 2027 budget request doubles down on many of the cuts that were proposed last year, cuts that this Congress put money back in to support. The proposed budget, I believe, once again misses the mark when it comes to advancing critical research, including core capacity and agricultural station funding at our land-grant universities like the University of New Hampshire. Protecting vital nutrition programs, particularly for pregnant women, children, and seniors, and restoring key staffing capacity that has been lost over the last year, most notably the institutional knowledge in field offices in the Granite State and across the country. I hope that we'll be able to discuss during this hearing the Food for Peace program as well, and other international programs that USDA runs and that this budget proposes to eliminate. What is clear, as I said, is that this budget fails to meet the moment. I hope we can once again reject it on a bipartisan basis because there are still plenty of places where we can work together to deliver for our farmers, for our producers, and for rural America. Again, I appreciate you being here, Secretary Rollins, and I look forward to our discussion. Thank you, Chair Hoven. Actually, if I could just add one more thing before I close, because while it's not under the jurisdiction of this subcommittee, it is under USDA, and I want to register my strong opposition and concern about the plans to close facilities at the Bartlett Experimental Forest in New Hampshire, where they have been collecting data for about 100 years. With that closure, that data is going to be lost. Our experimental forests conduct critical research that supports healthy forests and bolsters local economies, and I hope USDA is going to reconsider and reverse course on this plan, because I think it's going to set us back when it comes to forest management. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. And with that, Secretary Rollins, will turn to you for your opening statement.
Well, thank you. And I'll just say first, I look forward to working with you. I've kept a list of all of this, so I really appreciate it. Chairman Hoven, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of this subcommittee, first I must apologize for my voice. I'm in the middle of a lot of allergies, and I so apologize, but I didn't want to cancel on y'all, and we'll just suffer through it together. So I apologize at the front end, but I think we'll get to the end of this. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to provide an update on the Department of Agriculture, the challenges that we've inherited, what we've accomplished so far, and where we are heading under President Trump's leadership, and the opportunity to be back in front of so many of you friends and partners in this effort to revive, restore rural America, and certainly at the heart of that our agriculture system, our farmers and ranchers. We have not been shy about noting that the administration, when we came in a little over a year ago, inherited a farm economy that saw the cost of doing business skyrocket. Commodity prices had plummeted from 30-year highs in the last administration. Farm income experienced historic declines, and our farmers saw no new trade deals in 4 years and inherited a forecasted $50 billion U.S. agricultural trade deficit after leaving just 4 years before with an agricultural trade surplus. While we've already made substantial progress in reversing this trajectory for American ag, I want to acknowledge that such a seismic reroute cannot happen overnight, which is why it is so important that our work continues, because food security remains a matter of national security. And it's been a pleasure being able to partner with all of you on both sides of the aisle as we have continued this important work this last 14 months. We are providing our farmers with the short-term support that they need through our Farmer Bridge Assistance Program and others. In just the last year alone, we have delivered tens of billions of dollars in targeted direct relief to farmers who are weathering rising input costs, devastating storms, and temporary market disruptions. President Trump and our congressional Republicans delivered unprecedented wins, the largest investment in rural American history under the Working Families Tax Cuts. This included an increase in reference prices for the first time in over a decade. Senator Hoeven, I remember our little meeting last spring when we talked about, is there even a possibility to include a lot of this in the One Big Beautiful Bill? And thanks to your leadership and our president's support, you were able to include those reference price increases, improving crop insurance by enhancing coverage and lowering premiums, making the death tax exemption permanent for over 2 million family farms, permanently doubling the small business expensing under Section 179, and authorizing, this is just a few wins, authorizing $50 billion for a new rural health transformation program now run by Dr. Oz. Input costs, of course, remain top of mind for our farmers, and recently USDA has been working literally around the clock to harness the cost of key inputs like fertilizer, certainly what has happened in the last 45 or 50 days. The Trump administration has already taken a whole suite of actions to make fertilizer more affordable and available. We are working across the cabinet to accelerate private investment, to lift permitting slowdowns, to align on transportation challenges, lifting the Jones Act, opening up lines from Venezuela, and much more to be announced very soon. These are meaningful actions in the short term, but we are also working on a long-term strategy, and that has really been the spotlight that has been shined on these input costs recently has allowed a larger conversation than normal about the importance of reshoring our fertilizer industry and certainly our domestic supply chains for our agriculture, including amplifying new technologies and ensuring farmers will continue to have secure, accessible options when any crisis heads our way. I'm confident we will meet this challenge because of how USDA has successfully managed other challenges in the last 14 months. Senator Baldwin, we were just speaking about eggs before the hearing began, and HPAI. One of our very first actions at USDA a year ago was launching a comprehensive $1 billion plan to combat avian flu and bring egg prices down. That plan is working. HPAI cases in commercial poultry and turkey flocks are down 61% over this time last year, and the number of birds affected are down 46%. Now, we still have a lot of work to do, but we are making progress. Of course, the price of eggs has plummeted as well. We have also made substantial progress to protect our livestock producers from the New World screwworm. Just Friday, I was in South Texas to break ground on an historical New World screwworm, new sterile fly production facility in America. For decades now, we've relied on a facility in Panama and some facilities in Mexico, but it was time that we, again, reshore the solution to these challenges for our livestock producers. And so we are doing just that at warp speed. We broke ground, and we expect this new facility to be, phase one, to be up and running by the end of next year. Again, something that normally would take 3 to 5 years. Through America First trade policies, President Trump has made sure our farmers can compete and win in global markets. We have already secured in just year one alone 18 reciprocal trade deals and frameworks that level the playing field and lay the foundation for long-term prosperity. After inheriting a nearly $50 billion agricultural trade deficit in year one for Trump 2, with no new trade deals under the last administration, we are now looking. The data is showing that agricultural trade deficit will be slashed by 42% in year one of our second term alone. Looking ahead, we will continue to build on this momentum, improving foreign market access for our producers and addressing the remaining agricultural trade deficit. Of course, that's in combination with the battle to open up the domestic markets for our biofuels producers as well. In partnership with Secretary Kennedy, USDA is carrying out the most significant reset of federal nutrition policy in American history. Our new dietary guidelines are science-based and entirely devoted to ensuring that American producers, our farmers and ranchers, are at the forefront of providing affordable, nutrient-dense food to American families. It's important to remember that USDA's biggest line item by far are our 16 nutrition programs where we spend more than $400 million every single day. This work and so much more is highlighted through our partnership and ensuring across the federal government that we're doing everything we can to ensure that those who truly need the programs have access to them, but those who are part of a fraudulent effort to take from our taxpayers and to take from those who are most needy. Currently, an effort being led by our Vice President continues to be a priority for us at USDA. From day one, I have said nonstop, and certainly with you, Senator Hoeven in North Dakota, that farm security is national security. Last summer, we launched our National Farm Security Action Plan that boldly integrates agriculture into the federal government's national security strategy for the first time ever. Our plan treats the ownership of farmland, it treats animal disease defense, and it treats food supply chains as major national security issues that they are. And we continue to work with our congressional and state partners on these issues. I'll close by saying this. Our farmers, ranchers, and our rural communities not only feed, fuel, and clothe us, they bear and sustain a set of values that make our very way of life possible, and that is required to pass on liberty to future generations. It is an honor to fight for these indispensable patriots every single day alongside President Trump. And as we celebrate our 250 years of freedom, all of us at Abraham Lincoln's People's Department will continue fighting as hard as we possibly can for the men and women who help make our very freedom possible. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And we'll now turn to a 5-minute round of questioning. You know, something that you emphasize, and I appreciate very much in terms of the vitality and the future of agriculture, value-added agriculture, ag tech, as I mentioned before, precision ag, and then access to markets. All those things, I think, are things that our farmers and ranchers want and that will make them strong now and for years to come. And that market-based approach is really important. Right now, our ranchers are doing better after a long down cycle. They suffered for a long darn time, and people forget how tough they've had it. And as they work to grow their herds, they've actually increased the amount of meat per animal such that we're actually close to record production. I think we hit record production in 2022, but we're still very close to it. And so not only will they grow the herds, but they're producing more meat per animal as well. We need to keep that in mind, and they will respond to the market, and they're doing an incredible job. And it's good to see them, you know, getting back on their feet after one of the longest down cycles I've seen in cow-calf operation. Our farmers, on the other hand, are not.
Right.
I know you're very focused on it. Again, appreciate the Farm Bridge Assistance Program, the $12 billion we provided through CCC. And again, thanks to your willingness to be innovative, creative, and work with the administration and President Trump, that's how we got it done. I want to thank you for that. We need to do more there. And so there's two aspects. One is I firmly believe that in a supplemental, along maybe with weather assistance, maybe some funding for the military, that there needs to be an ag piece there. I want your thoughts on that. And then also on the CCC, which has been a vital, vital tool And as you know, I feel that we need to increase it and update it. And I believe you do too. I'll let you speak for yourself on it. But that is a vital tool, not only in terms of the Title I commodity programs, which it funds, which, of course, we've updated ARC PLC, which is going to help our farmers now, but that's the mechanism through which it's funded. But then it also has a big role to play in terms of the other assistance we've provided, like Farm Bridge assistance, but also conservation and other things as well. So if you could kind of, if you would, kind of reference both. What more we do on Farm Bridge assistance and your thoughts on CCC.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so first, the importance of moving this assistance out and certainly carving out that additional $12 billion that we released on December 6th of last year with the President in the Cabinet room and focused on that, I think was helpful. I agree with you. I think there is more to do, and you and I have certainly spoken about that, and I have with many members of your committee. And I personally don't want to speak on behalf of the administration, but personally would really appreciate the opportunity to ensure that we do have additional funds available, especially as we are facing some unforeseen consequences of the conflict overseas, especially with some of our input prices. So I think as these numbers continue to shake out, and it's a day-by-day dynamic, certainly set of numbers, but I think those conversations are really important. And your leadership and this committee's leadership and focusing on our ag community, again, it is a matter of national security, and there's so much we could talk about in that, the consolidation of so many of our industries, the purchase by foreign interests of a lot of our agriculture is all part of this, but being able to support our farmers and ranchers in America and making sure they can continue what they do best is a priority. So that's the first part. The second part on the CCC, as you know, under the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, there were a lot of new commitments that were made for agriculture, and that was welcome and certainly part of our list as well. But as a result of that, the CCC has become, frankly, committed, perhaps overcommitted, as we look to a new round of payments and borrowing against that limit for this year as we move toward this fall. There are also some other potential significant projects that need to be looked at. I'll be announcing a couple of those in the next few days. In fact, I think I'll be in Wisconsin on Monday, Missouri on Friday, to talk about some of this. So I personally, and have been on record as saying, I think it's time. It's been, 30 years since the last time we increased the limit of the CCC, and we would certainly welcome that at USDA.
Yeah, I think that's right on, and I would emphasize that that's very bipartisan. That is a tool that has been used by both parties, and I get that the priorities may be a little different from time to time, but that's reality. You know, what's good for the goose, good for the gander, and I think, you know, this committee tries to be bipartisan, and so as we approach that issue, I think we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
So thank you for your comments.
I agree.
Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Rollins, more than 12,000 women, infants, and children in New Hampshire rely on the WIC program for healthy food, for breastfeeding support, and for nutrition education. You pointed out how much money we spend on food programs in this country. We know that nationally, 53% of babies born in the country are served by WIC, ensuring that they have the nutrition they need to get through to age 5. And one of the most important parts of the WIC program is the cash value voucher, which allows participants to afford the cost of fresh fruits and vegetables each month. Yet, the FY27 budget request would reduce WIC's cash value voucher back to 2014 levels, providing only $13 a month for pregnant, breastfeeding, and postpartum women, and only $10 a month for children when adjusted for inflation. Now, I know you've been to the grocery store lately, as I have, and that $10 or $13 isn't going to buy very much fresh fruits and vegetables these days. So help me understand these proposed cuts to benefits given the administration's stated MAHA goals, or the recently updated dietary guidelines for America, that would encourage Americans to eat real food. So can you support fully funding the WIC program and including the cash value voucher program?
Senator, thank you for that question. And what I will say is a lot of the focus and the reason the president was elected in 2020, 3 for, again, 2024, 2025, was Americans sincerely believed that the government and government programs had just grown too large. And I want to answer your question directly on WIC, but I just want to provide the framing for that. And so what we were tasked with as the leads of his agencies was to do everything we could to realign the federal government in putting the taxpayer and the taxpayer dollar to its best and highest use. Having said that, under the Biden administration, the infusion of funding into WIC was a 200% increase under the 4 years of Biden, 200%.
I understand, and
That's just not sustainable.
Out of time, and I don't want to discuss what the Biden administration did. I want
But
to
that's what we're right-sizing.
Amount of money that is being talked about for the cash value vouchers for fruits and vegetables.
So
which
we're
I believe
returning
is
it.
too low.
Well, and I think certainly we could have longer conversations on that, and that's a reasonable position to have. We are taking it back to pre-COVID levels, adjusted.
14 is earlier than pre-COVID levels.
Pre-COVID, the rate's $9 for children, $11 for moms, adjusted for inflation. And again, all of these programs are they're also available through the food stamp program, through the SNAP program, et cetera.
But as we know, under the big beautiful bill, the food programs have been reduced as well. So the SNAP program has been reduced. The number of people who qualify have been reduced. And yet what I hear in New Hampshire when I go home, and New Hampshire is a relatively high income state, we're a small state, and yet what I hear is that we have more and more need for food assistance because people are still food insecure. Keeping on food, I want to go to the foreign assistance programs because I was disappointed to see that the FY27 budget request eliminated the Food for Peace program. It eliminated McGovern-Dole Food for Education program. Now, I have appreciated very much Senator Hoeven and I have worked with Undersecretary Lindbergh on the Food for Peace program. He was very responsive. I'm glad that the FY25 awards have finally been signed, and we understand that food will begin to move through the pipelines again soon, 4 months into this new calendar year and way into the fiscal year. But can you assure us that regardless of where the administration stands on the future of Food for Peace, that if this committee continues to provide funding for it in FY27, as I think we will, do you commit to continuing the program and fulfilling all of the statutory requirements of Food for Peace, including those outlined in the interagency agreement?
Yes, clearly, if it is funded, anything that is funded from this committee and this Congress, we will absolutely step up and do the very best we can to ensure that we're meeting every metric that has been given to us. And I think we've proven that with the Food for Peace program, and Undersecretary Lindbergh has been a real leader on that, I believe, as it's moved over to USDA.
Well, as you know, given the other constraint that farmers are struggling under, to eliminate this market for them would also be a significant hit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Now, Senator Moran, you're next, but I'm wondering, would you be willing to defer to Senator Collins?
It's a tough question.
Senator Collins. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much, Senator Moran. That was very gracious of you. Let me start by thanking the Secretary for taking an action that we have been pushing for many years, and that is the establishment of the Office of Seafood at the USDA for recognizing that our fishermen, our lobstermen and women are farmers of the sea.
That's right.
And I'm very appreciative. This is something that has been needed to be done for years to help with everything from disaster assistance to marketing opportunities. And I am delighted that you have brought it about. So
thank you.
I start with that that thank you, and I do want to point out that the Ag Appropriations Bill includes funding for you to establish a seafood industry liaison, and hope to see that happen next.
That's great.
Thank you.
Would they be technically ranchers then?
Farmers, we'll stick with farmers.
Senator, I will say that I remember we talked about this when I came to visit you during the nomination process, and I never forgot. And we kind of touched base a few times over the last 14 months. I didn't understand why it hadn't been done in the past. It seemed so clear to me that was the right thing to do. And we had some fishermen. I'm so sorry you couldn't be there last week when we launched it, but we had some fishermen from your state. So gave you a lot of credit for getting to that point and your leadership and focus on that. So thank you. It was an honor to get to do it.
Well, thank you for getting it done. There was another issue that you and I discussed early on, and I know have a common concern about, and that is the impact of PFAS, the toxic class of forever chemicals that are being found in our soils, water, animal feed, crops, and livestock. This is having a detrimental impact on agricultural producers. In Maine, the presence of PFAS in wastewater sludge spread decades ago as a fertilizer. We're here, the farmers were trying to help out the municipality in which they lived, but the result is preventing some of our family farmers from being able to sell their products, such as milk, for example, causing them significant financial harm. The University of Maine has undertaken research that is relevant to the presence of PFAS and how to remove it. I've been pleased to support this important work by securing nearly $33 million over the past 5 years for the Agricultural Research Service at the University of Maine to establish a new center of excellence for PFAS solutions. Madam Secretary, I know this is something that's near and dear to your heart and that your mother has been very involved in this issue as a legislator as well, so that you're very familiar with it. I simply will ask that you continue your support of this partnership between the ARS and the University of Maine.
Yes, thank you. And I know Maine is sort of the hub for the research, for the leadership. It's in large part due, well, probably primarily due to you, if not entirely due to you, Senator. And certainly, as we discussed, my mom, who is the oldest freshman state legislator in Texas history, maybe in American history, at almost 80, she ran and won for the first time, and she's known as Hurricane Helen in Austin because of this issue. And she certainly has been following in your footsteps, a pioneer. So yes, I am fully supportive, and will do whatever I can to make sure we're making sure our farmers and ranchers have what they need on that.
Thank you. I love your mother's role in this, and I know that she cares deeply about it and is making a real difference. I want to switch quickly to two other issues. One is that the budget has cuts in rural development. That is extraordinarily important to my state, which is one of the most rural in the entire nation. It helps to provide access to safe and reliable water and wastewater systems, telecommunications, broadband connectivity, housing, and so much more. So I was disappointed to see that the president's budget request has major funding cuts to several rural development programs, which follows other changes such as handbook revisions, creating significant restrictions on home loans. What is your plan for ensuring that rural Americans continue to have access to programs that rural development has traditionally funded?
Yeah, I will respond a couple different ways. First, obviously, my boss, the president, and our OMB is very focused on, again, realigning the government and making sure every dollar that is spent in the best possible use. Having said that, I agree with you that our rural development programs are key. We have talked at length about the importance of returning prosperity to rural America. Having grown up in a town of 1,200, raised by a single mom, I can attest firsthand to the importance of these programs. So finding that balance is what we're looking toward. We did inherit in rural development a 25% default rate for the loans that were pushed out. Certainly in the last administration, there was a lot without any guardrails on. So trying to right-size that at the same time that we are writing the budget is a big priority, but understanding that there are really important programs that need to be supported through these programs. So as I have, hopefully for the last 15 months, worked with each of you, when you have something that pops up, something specific, my promise is to continue to do that and to keep sending us feedback as well on these programs.
Thank you. And finally, very quickly, specialty crops are very important in Maine, whether it's our wild blueberries, apples, potatoes, and they've had a hard time lately. Our wild blueberry crop and our apple producers were affected by an excessively rainy spring that prevented pollination from occurring, and then they were hit with a drought in the summer and fall. A lot of times the disaster assistance programs are really tailored for row crops, and they're not easily accessible for specialty crops. There was some money set aside, but frankly, it's not enough. So I would simply ask you to commit to work to ensure that our specialty crop producers have this backstop that is needed to overcome conditions not of their making, not of their fault, but which have a truly detrimental effect.
Yeah, if I could, three very quick things on this. First of all, we are almost at the finish line for the specialty crop block grant for Maine. I know we've had 19 meetings with your team from your state. We got the work plan about a month ago. We are literally about to be able to deploy those funds. That's the first thing. The second thing I'll say is in Missouri on Friday, I'll be announcing some tweaks to the SDRP program, and they're tweaks specific to specialty crop producers. If you're a blueberry grower, you don't have the same paperwork that, you know, a corn or wheat farmer does. And so that has been, what I've learned is that has been to the detriment of these specialty crop growers. They don't fit into the box of applying for these programs. So we've got, I think, a really good announcement on Friday to adjust for that and to create some more bandwidth there, which, again, I don't want to get too far ahead of the announcement. We're still finalizing all the details. And then the third thing on the $1 billion that we did carve out from the Farmer Bridge Assistance in December of last year, we announced, and we are moving through the specialty crop deployment of that funding right now. We got word, we closed the portal to start figuring out how to deploy the money, and then I got a call from Senator Slotkin, actually, from Michigan, another big specialty crop state, and she said, Brooke, my guys didn't even know how to apply. This is such a new day for them. So we reopened the portal for another 30 days and deployed more resources to help the specialty croppers be able to apply for these programs. So again, I realize we have a long way to go, but I do think we're making some progress.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I knew you would.
Such a gentleman.
You knew you'd want to do that, Senator Moran. Yes. Senator Merkley.
Thank you very much, Secretary Rollins. And for decades, we have successfully partnered in Oregon with USDA's Agricultural Research Service. I visited a number of these research stations on dry weed and grasslands, and we have berries, we have horticultural, you know, because we have so many diverse products coming off our acreage in our state. So what I've been concerned about is that I keep hearing from our Oregon producers that our crops are in jeopardy because research positions remain unfilled. And just to give you an example, the horticultural crops disease and pest management, which does like all this different stuff, fruits and flowers and vegetables and ornamental plants, the whole kind of breadth of the horticultural world. They lost their plant pathologist a year ago, and the position hasn't been filled, and they're also missing administrative officers, lab technicians, and so the scientists don't feel they have the technical support to be able to address the huge variety of threats that are coming from every direction, invasive species and so on and so forth. Can you fill these positions quickly?
Yes, and why don't we get in touch with your office, and if I can get those specifics, I've just written them down, but let me get more information and we'll prioritize that.
Great, we'll get you all the details on that, I appreciate that. And then you have amplified and emphasized the importance of research across the department, but the budget proposes reductions that include the elimination of the Forest Service research. Now, our state is a very forested state. We have a lot of different types of conifers, 20 plus different types, different slopes, different dry land, wetland species, different challenges on mitigation of pests. But just to give you an example, one threat is sudden oak death, and sudden oak death is a big threat as it moves. It's kind of a waterborne mold that's moving up from California. We've been trying to control it, but there's a variation of it that is a threat to the Douglas fir. Wow, that's a massive concern for our forest world. And so do you really want to eliminate the Forest Service research, or can we persuade you to support that research?
Well, I believe what you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is under the president's current budget that moves, it isn't eliminating it, it's actually moving it over to, and sorry, I didn't prepare as well for Forest Service because I didn't realize we were going to be talking about it, but my understanding is we're actually not getting rid of it, we're just moving it over to the Department of the Interior, so we're aligning all of the research on all the Forest Service specific programs. But let us look into that, if you will. My directive, as USDA has gone through its reorganization, moving the Forest Service more to a state-based effort, ensuring that the people that are serving the forest are the ones that are closest to the forest, not necessarily here in Washington, that nothing has been eliminated. We're only realigning and recalibrating to get it closer to the people that it serves, and frankly, the forest that it serves as well. But let me dig into that, and I'll circle back.
Okay. Well, you did mention an issue I've been more broadly concerned about. I'm hearing about it from people all over Oregon, and that is the movement. Well, there's two things. It's a restructuring of the Forest Service in general, and the move of headquarters to Salt Lake City, the move of research headquarters to, I believe, to Colorado, because we have like outstanding research done in our Oregon forests. Every little town was a timber town, and so it's kind of in our blood, in our culture, and so we've had just world-class research, and we're really worried about losing that. BLM does have forest lands, but the bulk of the forest lands are Forest Service lands. So I would hope that if the research is being moved, that maybe hold a dialogue with the stakeholders
100%.
before making that decision to move it.
Yes, sir. Again, my understanding is there should be no change to anything in Oregon. The whole goal is to move all of the work closer to you, not to take it away from those that are closest to the forest. So hopefully this is actually additive to that project and that program in Oregon, in that forest specifically, that we'll be able to actually maybe even do a little bit more there. That's the goal.
And that's why I want to have the stakeholders embedded in the conversation to make sure that it is a win and an advance and not something that reduction. And my time's out, so I'll just mention that we are worried about the transfer of the firefighting out of the Forest Service, and again, would like to see a bunch of consultation to make sure that it's done, reorganization's done in a fashion because the forest fires are brutal in the West.
No, I agreed, and I think you have been part of. I'll start the calls again with our key senators as we move into fire season. I do them weekly, and several of it's obviously bipartisan from people from the West. Lots of the senators from the Ag Committee are on, but I'll make sure you have an invitation to that too, where Doug Burgum and I get on and we just talk to you guys on exactly what's happening, where, how we're moving resources around, what that looks like. To your point, I'm not sure I've ever been more impressed with a group of people than the U.S. Forest Service wildland firefighters. They are an extraordinary group of patriots who do a remarkable job. And we had I don't want to say a good fire season. No fire season is ever good, but we had a much less destructive one last year than we have in a couple of years. And hopefully we're able to track for that again this year in the coming years.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Senator Moran.
Chairman, thank you. Secretary, welcome. It seems when you're in the room, it's like family, and I think Kansas farmers and agriculture producers feel that way as well. I want to follow up on a topic that Senator, I want to talk about 5 things, and I'm going to try to do it very briefly because I noticed that you're taking notes, and I want to have all 5 on your notepad.
Make sure I'm writing them all down.
Thank you. And a topic that was raised by Senator Shaheen, I continue to believe that Food for Peace, the natural home for that program, is at USDA, and I'm going to continue my efforts to permanently transfer that program to your department. In the absence of that transfer, I appreciate the arrangement that was made between USDA and the State Department. I know in January it was announced that USDA planned to buy 200,000 tons of commodities for the Food for Peace program. There's a lot of Kansas ties to this Food for Peace program, and you're partnering with World Food Program to send it out. I think that was done. I'm pretty certain it was done with FY25 funding. You now have FY26 funding, and I assume that you'll have FY27 funding. Can you tell me what the next step is to make certain that food is in the places it needs to be and that hungry people are being fed? What needs to happen that's not happening?
My understanding from Undersecretary Lindbergh and the team that's been working on this is obviously there's always going to be a little bit of clunkiness as we're moving things around, but that ultimately the team feels confident. They're happy to accept the program. We have a really good group of people working on it, a lot fewer numbers than we're working on it before, but seemingly it is working. If you were hearing different, please let me know and we'll work to solve for that.
I appreciate that, and I'd have a shout out for Secretary Lindbergh for his leadership in this project.
He's been great.
Glad to see this take place. I still would like for you to join me in Kansas, and I want to show you and let you see for yourself the National Bioagriscience Facility in Manhattan, Kansas. The Agricultural Appropriation Bill required, and first of all, I guess I should say that there are impediments to NBAS coming fully online and taking over the mission of Plum Island, the Animal Disease Center. But you spoke to this last year and indicated that USDA was working hard to accomplish this. Secretary Baden has been with me in Kansas, and I appreciate you supporting that visit. This is the largest federal investment in Kansas in our history.
Yeah.
$1.25 billion, and we have a significant asset that needs to be operational as quickly as possible, and that's for reasons that we wouldn't want to be wasting those dollars and those personnel, those people with expertise, but also Plum Island, managed by the Department of Homeland Security, is set to close in short order, and we wouldn't want a gap between that time and the capability of NBAF to do its replacement to do that job.
Correct.
So you were required in FY26, not you personally, but the Department of Agriculture, to provide a joint briefing between USDA and Homeland Security to this committee in regard to this process. That hasn't happened, and I would guess it's because of the shutdown at the Department of Homeland Security. But I would highlight for you that in the absence of that, I'd love to have a conversation, you and I personally, about about NBAF, and I'll restate my invitation for you to see, but I'd like to be able to personally impress upon you the value of this asset.
I would welcome that. And I have touched base with the new Secretary Mullins on this. And once the DHS is back up and running, he's ready to go. So we'll get that scheduled. Yeah.
Fertilizer production and fertilizer prices. As you know, the American Farm Bureau indicated that 70% of farmers are unable to afford fertilizer that they need this season. On Tuesday, you stated that more details would be forthcoming on USDA's work in the fertilizer space. Anything you want to share today?
I don't want to get ahead of any finalization. What I will say is we've had daily calls with the White House, with EPA, with DHS, with DHS, with Commerce, with Treasury, the very top of these organizations, for an all-of-government approach on fertilizer. Obviously, the short-term issues are acute and really require significant effort as we work to bring those prices down for the short term. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, the long term, though, cannot be overlooked. The fact that we have offshored so much of our fertilizer over the last decade or so is astounding to me. It is a national security effort issue, and we're relying on Russia and China for our fertilizer. So the announcements coming, I think, will be on both the short and the long term, but really good news long term structurally, and some potential funding that's going to be there. And I've been talking to the heads of the big fertilizer companies as well.
It is hugely significant. The price is dramatically different, and I would indicate that we've asked the folks at the Department of Commerce to look at tariffs that are placed on input issues, commodities that come from outside the United States, Morocco, for example.
Right.
And we have American fertilizer producers, but the components, some of the components in which they use to make that fertilizer are subject to tariffs, increasing the price. So we want to manufacture, process, and create fertilizer in the United States, but we still have to import some of the components that make up that fertilizer. So there's
Correct.
an opportunity there for that to occur. I have two more points, which I will only mention and then talk to you in person. Only one. 45Z and sustainable aviation fuel. Please make certain that we have an opportunity to have a conversation about another renewable fuel that could advance the cause of profitability in agriculture. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, Senator.
I believe I'm likely next.
It's been waiting very patiently.
Okay. Senator Baldwin.
Thank you. I always love it when there's overlap in our questions, and I want to say that Senator Moran, both his last point but also the longer question before was exactly where I wanted to start. I'm not going to have you repeat what you were saying to him. I'm listening with interest about announcements that might be forthcoming, so feel free to answer it for the record later. But I just want to reiterate that I, too, am hearing from my farmers and our agricultural industry about their struggles with the Trump administration's tariff policies and trade wars, input costs from fertilizer to farm machinery and fuel. But rising fertilizer costs are top of mind right now. And I hear from farmers back home routinely about this. The war in Iran is driving up the cost of fertilizer and fuel, and farmers are heading into the spring planting season facing significant financial strain. So as I said before, I want some assurances that the administration is taking this very seriously. But as you just said to Senator Moran, you have some forthcoming announcements. If you can get back to me also with that information, my farmers need relief, emphatically.
Yes, ma'am.
Secretary Rollins, this is not the first time that you and I have talked about the Dairy Business Innovation Initiative. Last February, Trump's DEI executive order froze funds for the Dairy Business Innovation Initiative, funds that were already appropriated. I sent a letter to USDA, then you and I spoke on the phone to restart these already committed payments. Given the valuable investment that this program provides for dairy farmers and the bipartisan support behind it, I was disappointed to see that the administration proposed eliminating the Dairy Business Innovation Initiative for fiscal year 2027. Can you explain why the USDA wants to eliminate a program that so many American dairy farmers and rural communities benefit from?
Senator, I will need to look into that and get back to you. Do you know was that under the RD budget? Do you know where specifically what budget that was under? Because that's the first.
The ag marketing.
Oh, under AMS. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let me look into that and get back to you. Obviously, we have been working around the clock on the dairy opportunities, whether it is putting whole milk back in schools. The dairy exports are expected to be up 17% this year. I've actually visited 6 dairies in the last year and will continue to do so. So my commitment is to look at that very, very closely and make sure that if it is important, you and I have discussed it before, that that program continues to receive the support it deserves.
Okay. I will look forward to that. This past December, Wisconsin had its first confirmed case of highly pathogenic avian influenza in dairy cattle. This spring, Wisconsin lost over 4.3 million hens, and 2 farms had to lay off 87 employees between the two. The public health response has been expensive for American farmers and American taxpayers. The response from this administration has been lacking, and it seems like this administration continues slow walking its own approach for a vaccine plan. So, Secretary Rollins, I have written you twice since December about the pressing urgency of the outbreak, and I asked you to deliver on your pledge to address avian influenza by following through on nationwide vaccination policy. Well, I do appreciate your response that I received at 1 p.m. today to my letter.
We're going to do better. We're doing better. We're going to do better, I promise.
Did get it before the hearing. I still don't feel confident that the administration is taking the vaccine policy seriously. So what updates on deploying these vaccines can you provide us today?
Well, if I may, Senator, the first thing I'll say is I'm going to gently push back that we haven't taken it seriously. I'm not sure, other than the screwworm, that I have spent more time in the last 14 months on any one issue than I have on HPAI. And in fact, I've been in touch with all of your governors, all of your ag commissioners. We put $1 billion into this effort a year ago. We spent about $450 million on biosecurity as we're working on the vaccine question. And we have $100 million. We have an innovation grant challenge. We've got about 80 different private sector partners that are looking to move out on that. We've already awarded the funding. I mean, all of this is moving very significantly with good news coming. As I mentioned, the HPAI numbers are significantly down this year because of the biosecurity, 61% down in cases, 46% down in birds. The vaccine question is one I take very, very seriously. In looking around the world, there hadn't yet been a vaccine that had been deployed successfully that had actually beaten the HPAI back. Having said that, France is in year 2, the Netherlands is in year 1, and I think one other European country. So now we begin to see some movement around the world. There was some real concern. I visited several of the labs that are researching this, that if we put a vaccine out too quickly, the virus could mutate, which viruses usually do, and jump to humans. So that's why I've been so extremely careful in stepping out on a vaccine and doubling down on the biosecurity. Having said that, we are as close as we have been. We're looking at pilot projects right now. I have not felt comfortable yet deploying that, but as you can see, based on funds spent, Senator, we are taking this very seriously and will continue to do so. That's my promise that.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin.
Thank
Senator
you.
Rounds.
Madam Chair, thank you. Feels good.
Senator Hovind's coming back. He's at a hearing.
First of all, Madam Secretary, first of all, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
I want to talk just a little bit about a couple of items that we visited about in the past. First of all, throughout your year in office, you have made eating real food and making America healthy again a priority. I had a very similar discussion yesterday with Secretary Kennedy, and appreciate each of you partnering together on this issue. South Dakota farmers and ranchers have worked tirelessly to produce the safest and the highest quality products in the world. I have serious concerns regarding lab-grown cells or cell-cultivated products attempting to enter the U.S. food system posing as meat. One example of these experiments takes pork fat cells grown in a lab and combines them with plant protein. This product is sold to consumers at the grocery store as a meatball. Yesterday in our subcommittee, Secretary Kennedy expressed his concerns with the overall safety of these products. My question to you today is on labeling. Do you share my concerns with these ultra-processed, lab-grown products being labeled as meat?
100%.
Thank you. If we both believe in truth in labeling, I was pleased to see your administration roll out guidance for the Product of the USA label for meat, poultry, and egg products derived from animals exclusively born, raised, and harvested. I'll say that again. Exclusively born, raised, harvested, and processed in the United States. As you know, for years, we've led the effort in the Senate to restore integrity to this voluntary label through my bill, the USA Beef Act. My question, as a follow-up question to your last answer, Secretary Rollins, do you believe any ultra-processed, lab-grown products should ever receive the Product of the USA label?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. And then Secretary Rollins, in order to help consumers have transparent labeling, does the USDA plan to establish a uniform labeling standard for products that are made with lab-grown cells so consumers aren't misled?
I am not familiar with anything happening right now, but if it is not happening, it will begin this afternoon, yes.
Excellent. I like that answer. That's appreciated. Let me talk just a little bit. In South Dakota, we had a very unfortunate instance where the Maud family, a family farming operation, had a real serious discussion over about 20-some acres of land where there was a dispute on boundary layers. Talk a little bit about your approach with resolving these issues and the way that you want to see the Department of Ag work with our farmers and ranchers, where if there are boundary disputes with the Forest Service and so forth, how do you want to see those handled in the future?
Well, thank you for bringing that up. One of the first things that I found out when I arrived at USDA in mid-February of last year was the weaponization of the Forest Service against a lot of our great ranchers, especially in the West. And this particular case, you had a mom and dad in their 30s, 2 young children, a 5th-generation rancher. It was an argument over where a fence was placed and an irrigation spigot was placed on 20 acres of their thousands of acres that her great-great-great-great-great-grandfather had been using the same fence line spigot, et cetera. The Forest Service showed up, arrested, indicted, and basically said, you need to find someone else to raise your children because you're going to go to jail over this fence line. And so this was in the last administration. So obviously when we got here, one of the first things we did was drop those charges, the criminal and the civil charges, et cetera. It goes to the larger question, sir, of the lawfare that, and I believe this is nonpartisan for the record. I don't think this is a Republican or Democrat thing. I don't think anyone thinks that a rancher should go to jail other than maybe an errant Forest Service employee over a disputed fence line. That's not America. So using the Maud case, had Andy Henry in New Jersey, we had the Kings in Washington State, really working to shine a light on what's happened at every level of government, especially as we're fighting to keep our family farms and ranches in the family and farming and ranching and not offshoring our food to other countries. This is how existential I believe this issue is, and the Maud case has really helped us lead the way. We have a lawfare portal now at USDA. We meet weekly to go through the cases and working with the Forest Service to ensure that these things don't ever happen again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll just say one more thing, and I know my time is about up, but E15 is critical in this country if we want to reduce gas prices. E15 right now, I would just ask for your support in trying to get E15 available year-round. The savings to the consumers in this country and the improvement for farmers and ranchers producing additional American energy is huge. I would just ask for your support in getting that across the finish line.
100%. I have been unequivocal. And in fact, when the president visited Iowa, he mentioned it in his remarks in Iowa, and he has since tweeted about it or Truth Social about it. So I think you have an administration that perhaps is more in line and supportive than ever before, and we will continue to be so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Round. Senator Heinrich.
Thank you. Secretary, at the end of March, you announced the reorganization of the Forest Service. That's a decision that's going to impact management of 193 million acres of national forest land and thousands of employees. This is what I have, but I'd like to have more. I mean, it's great to have a summary, but I've seen IKEA directions that were longer than this. So I want to drill down a little bit and ask you related questions, and then just ask you to be transparent with the committee with exactly how you see this reorganization playing out. How much is it going to cost to relocate staff to the new offices, the locations that don't currently exist, like Salt Lake City?
Do we have those exact numbers? We're still working on those numbers, Senator, but we'll make sure and get those to you. Ultimately, it's a massive cost savings, but that initial cost, I don't have those numbers, but we'll run those and make sure and get those to you.
I'd love to see that initial cost. And one of the things I'm concerned about is I don't want to see cost savings because we don't have people in place to be able to manage our forest lands. And when we moved the Bureau of Land Management to Colorado, we saw 87% of the folks decide not to do that. And that was not a reflection on Colorado. It's a great place to live, but people have lives, they have families, their spouses have jobs. They oftentimes don't have the flexibility to just pick up and move, especially if they're fairly advanced in their career. How have you looked at the potential loss in management capability for those folks who are not going to want to move from a regional office or from the headquarters to Salt Lake City?
So, Senator, it'll be interesting if I'm still in this role in a year from now. I think we'll have the data to show our initial conversations, our initial meetings. We've been extremely intentional about talking to our teams, what this potentially looks like. And for the most part, most of the career staff at USDA is extraordinary, and I've been blown away. But for the most part, most are really excited for the opportunity to leave, no offense against Washington, D.C., but to leave an extremely expensive area where a lot of our guys are having to live an hour away, 90 minutes away, and instead the opportunity to be closer to their work, to be closer, they can have a bigger home and a better school, and there's just so much opportunity out in America. There's no reduction in force here at all. It is just a move. We're doing it very carefully this summer so that people that would have kids in school, we're not ripping them out in the middle of school. We're working really hard to solve for those issues. But again, I understand your concern and would really welcome the opportunity to keep talking about it with your state. Clearly, you're very in the middle of all of it, and we've got some really good locations in Albuquerque and other places. And again, I would welcome the opportunity to keep the dialogue open as it's happening.
No, I appreciate that. How are you going to comply with the reprogramming requirements that are in the current Interior Approach bill?
I'm sorry?
The reprogramming requirements, because I assume you're going to have to reprogram funds to be able to effectuate this reorganization.
Oh, the reprogramming of the funds, that we've already, Deputy Secretary Vaden has been working on this nonstop with our team, a lot of them sitting in here today. And the work in partnership with the OMB has been going on, our Office of Management budget, for the last year. And my understanding is the reprogramming is underway. It's gone very smoothly and will continue to do so. Again, finding the new office space, the new research facilities, aligning with land-grant institutions is all a really positive way to move all of this out and has been very productive.
I raise that because there is a requirement for both notification and approval of the House and Senate committees on appropriations. So that's a piece that needs to happen if you're going to make
Okay, we'll follow up with you on that. Thank you, sir.
Of this scale. Can you provide the committee with the new organization chart? Is that something that already exists?
I believe that's under production right now, but let me follow back up with you directly on that, and we'll make every effort to get that to you at the very earliest point. I'm going to write that down.
And I'm going to run out of time here pretty quick, but are you in consultation with state governors in those states where we have national forests and regional offices?
Yes.
Across the board, all of them?
I personally have spoken to Governor Polis of Colorado, Governor Cox of Utah. I have not yet spoken personally with the governor of Washington or Oregon, but I would welcome that opportunity and will do so. I have not spoken to your governor yet, but I would really welcome the opportunity to do that as well.
I think that's important.
Yes, I'll add that to my list. And in fact, if you want to connect us, Senator, that would be great. I don't know that I have her number.
Okay.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Heinrich. Senator Husted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Rollins, thanks for being here. I think you were sworn in on February the 13th of last year.
That's
and
right.
My state in Ohio, we were right in the midst of an outbreak of avian flu. And we lost 5 million egg-laying hens during that period. And I know that Senator Baldwin talked a little bit about this in her questions to you. So I want to follow up on what you would foresee over the course of the next year happening to prepare. And I know this comes down to the question of the vaccinations. And does it work? Is it a solution? Is it just something that people say is a solution, but we don't really know? Like, explain to us where you think this is going so that I can relay this to our poultry.
Yeah, and the couple times I have been in your state with your governor, we have visited some of these egg farmers, and it is devastating. I mean, I'm sitting around a round table with 5th and 6th generation, rough and tough farmers, and they're tears. Like, Brooke, we don't know what to do. Like, it is so devastating to have to depopulate tens of thousands, millions of birds, and we believe the answer is a vaccine. And I respond with, and to you as well, that could be the answer, and very well may be the answer. But at that moment in time, this was last summer, we don't have all the data, and I am not willing to put America up on the experimental block to lead the rest of the world on this when we don't understand what that virus can do. We know it's already hopped to dairy cattle and to cattle, and so we just need more information. But in the meantime, we found $500 million, we recalibrated $500 million from other programs to invest in biosecurity. And Senator, that has made a difference. As I mentioned, we're 60% down this year in cases, 46% down in depop.
And that's great. But I would appreciate if you could keep us informed about where you think it's going, what the timeline is. And look, I'm not advocating for you to do it or not do it. I think we're just trying to figure out.
That's right. And that's so fair. And the $100 million we've spent on innovation, I think 80% of that is going into the research behind a vaccine and potential pilot projects that we'll be rolling out.
I want to switch to swine. The U.S. Swine Health Improvement Plan continues to improve health and marketability for U.S. swine. I've talked to some of our hog farmers, pork producers earlier this week, but they said that this program still lacks an approved federal advisory committee under the Federal Advisory Committee Act. And can you let us know where that approval stands and how we might work to make it come forward, because they've asked.
Yes, no, and certainly animal disease we've actually spent a lot of time on animal disease today, is a top priority, and certainly our pork producers are facing some significant challenges from the animal disease. My understanding is we're looking at that very, very closely. Of course, this administration's focus has been to get rid of FACAs, trying to slim government down, but I think a case has been very well made that it would be important in this instance, and the partnerships that the FACAs allow between the private sector and between government, there's nowhere that's more important than at USDA from my perspective with agriculture. So we're moving that along. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything here for you, but why don't I get a little more information on that and a timeline, Senator?
This particular case, it's the people that it would advise and regulate are the ones that want it. So,
that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And
no,
then
I understand.
finally, I just want to say thank you for something. You approved Ohio's request to prohibit the purchase of sugary drinks through the SNAP program. And this is something that literally we've been working on in our state for over 2 decades to try to figure out, because it's such a huge contributor to diabetes and obesity and unhealthy outcomes for people who are lowest income Americans. And the fact that we can demonstrate that the money can go to better things and that we can hopefully improve diets and health outcomes, just it was an important thing for our state. We asked for it and appreciate the approval of it.
No, thank you. Ohio is one of 22 states so far that has applied and been approved, and we're really proud of that. I think that the front end of it is important, but the health outcomes that it will result in is going to be a game changer for our lower income communities.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Husted. Senator Peters.
Thank you. Secretary Rollins, it's
Hi,
really
good
good to see you
afternoon.
here today.
You
hope
too.
all is well. And just have a few questions for you. First off, in my home state of Michigan, I think you're well aware of our agricultural sector, and we are the second largest contributor, or agriculture is the second largest contributor to our state's economy, and our specialty crop industries are a big part of that equation. In fact, most people don't realize in terms of the diversity of agriculture, we're the most diverse in the country next to California, which is incredible testament to specialty crops. That's why I've long fought for strong funding for the APHIS Specialty Crop Pest Program, and why I'm pleased to see that when you were in Michigan just last week,
Yes.
to announce the availability of over $275 million in FY26 grant funding for the specialty crop industry. That announced funding is in part coming through the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. And while I certainly support the funding, I've also recently fielded some questions about future implementation of this program. Specifically, Secretary, I've heard a good deal of concern regarding USDA's announcement that starting in fiscal year 27, the agency will require a 25% cost share for all program sub-awards. The Specialty Crop Block Grant Program was created to address basically a structural gap in federal fund policy, namely that specialty crop growers basically receive little or no direct support compared to the traditional crop programs. So my worry is that this new cost share is basically going to box out some of our smaller specialty crop industries who won't have the resources to hit that match. And basically, by having that large increase in the match, you're, in my mind, defeating the original intent of the program, which is to help these smaller specialty crop folks. So I'd love to know more details about this cost share and how USDA came to this particular decision, including which stakeholders the agency consulted with in making the decision. I hope that is something you can provide either now or to my team in a follow-up. But I think we need to make sure this program works for our smaller specialty crop industry. So I'd love to work with you on rethinking this if necessary, so that we are able to meet the original intent of the program.
Yeah, Senator, let me dig into that a little bit more, and then why don't we get on the phone about that? Listen, the specialty crops, the time I spent in Michigan, the time I've spent in other states where that's such an important piece, those are our smaller farmers. I mean, those are, you know, the men and women and the multi-generational apple farmers and blueberry farmers and others that we are fighting every day to keep in business and to support, and they have struggled and struggled. So let me dig into that a little bit more and see if there is an alternative solution to that we can come up with. But I agree with you. That's really important.
I appreciate that. I'll look forward to the follow-up with you and your team. You made the specialty crop funding announcement that I mentioned earlier at Michigan State University, a really good choice, I may say, for you to go there.
It was great.
So I trust while you were there at that very great school, you saw firsthand the critical role that land-grant universities play in supporting ag producers and the rural economy generally. And while I'm very supportive of the funding for the Specialty Crops Research Initiative announced during your trip, I am, I will say, disappointed that the President's budget request proposes to eliminate critical support for the Hatch Formula research funding that directly supports faculty salaries and research center operations where this research is actually conducted. Additionally, the budget request proposes to slash in half the funding for cooperative extension, which, as I know, you know cooperative extensions very well. This basically, they take applied research and actually translate it into the real world to make sure that they're addressing agricultural development needs, and those farmers can get the best of the best of research in order to enhance their productivity and their bottom line. So my question for you is, why are these longstanding research resources that do so much for our farmers and for our rural communities actually being targeted for cuts in the budget request?
Yes, sir. The answer, to best answer your question, let me just say that this president and White House and certainly our cabinet are behind the idea that a formula fund isn't the best and most responsible way to support taxpayer dollars. And what happens with the formula funding versus the specific funding, like the specialty crop announcement we made at $275 million, the specific funding is a better way to utilize taxpayer dollars. But to your point, I'm a Texas A&M alum, and we can probably argue, you and I, around and around. We actually already have on who's got the best land grant. But
We have.
Yes.
Debate.
Yeah, it is an ongoing debate, understandably. But certainly the formula funds has led to some unfortunate support of research that I don't think anyone would necessarily agree with, some specific cases. So this is really an effort of this president and this White House and our cabinet to maybe reset what we're funding, have a good discussion about it, and make sure that every dollar that's being deployed is being deployed to its highest and best use. Having said that, there is no one who's more supportive of our incredible land grants than I am, and I'm proud every day to work alongside them and hope to support them moving forward.
Well, I'd hope so, and the extension programs in particular.
Incredible.
You've seen that firsthand in your home state as well, I know.
Oh, absolutely. And as a proud recipient and product, frankly, of the extension programs, having been an agriculture major at Texas A&M, the new Texas A&M president just announced, started as an assistant extension agent. I, in fact, told the Michigan State president, whose name is very difficult, I can't remember, Dr. Drew something. I had a great chat with him, Michigan State's president, about connecting them. So yes, those are vital, especially when we talk about rural America and returning prosperity to rural America. That's a lot of the heartbeat and the soul of rural America in Michigan, in Texas, in New Hampshire, in North Dakota, and Mississippi, and Nebraska, and all across the country.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Rollins, for being here and doing such an incredible job. You've truly been an outstanding leader for farmers and ranchers and during some tough times, and I just want you to know that you are very much appreciated.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, I want to express my support for the newest addition of the Agriculture Appropriations Subcommittee staff, Ms. Laura Lee Burkett.
Welcome.
We look forward to working with you and excited that you're here. And I know that you will help move this subcommittee in great directions, so no pressure there. But we welcome you. Secretary Rollins, my first question pertains to a problem landowners in Mississippi are having. They've been experiencing with the enrollment and the participation in the USDA's voluntary conservation programs administered by the NRSC, the Natural Resources Conservation Service. The problem is primarily associated with the NRCS's Working Lands Program, which are so vital to allowing farmland to remain in production while also addressing natural resource concerns for specifics to that area. And before a landowner can participate in this program, an agency cultural resource specialist must sign off on it to confirm proposed practices meet the cultural resources and the historic preservation requirements. The problem is we've been without an NRCS cultural resource specialist in Mississippi for quite some time. And it's just resulted in a lot of producers having to wait for a very long time for the surveys needed to implement the projects that they're working on that's pretty vital to their operations. And some landowners have spent tens of thousands of dollars on common sense conservation improvements, knowing that they would not impact cultural resources in any way, but yet they still haven't been approved, and they haven't been informed. They've been informed that they may never get approved. So we're very concerned about that, and we know every NRCS funded or assisted program projects triggers federal reviews required by all of the agencies, National Historic Preservation Acts, and all of those things. So this position is pretty critical for USDA to fulfill its contractual obligations with farmers and landowners, and eliminating duplicative paperwork, reducing the administrative burden. I hear from all of these people because I know all of these people, and improving the program delivery is one of the USDA's 2027 budget initiative highlights. So by talking to your team, I understand that you are making a lot of progress here, and I want to let you know your team's been so good to work with.
Thank you.
We really appreciate the response and the way
They're
that
the
they
best.
dive in for us.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
I just want to thank you for working with us to resolve this issue. And do you have any comments that you would like to
Yes.
make? And will you, just let us know your commitment of working with Congress going forward to get this to where it needs to be?
100%. And I think that I know specific to your case, Senator, I know there's now a Tiger team in place. I know that we have updated our training manuals, and hopefully this is across the country, not just Mississippi, to ensure that there isn't a absolute, if no one can approve this stack of applications, then that doesn't help anybody. So we need to amend that. We're doing that right now. We are completely recalibrating our hiring processes and trying to get more people in right away in all of these offices. And I think we're making progress. I just met earlier today with Bill Beam and Richard Fordyce, who run this area for us. We've got 10 of our top state executive directors for NRCS and FSA coming in next week. I'm going to meet with them. We're brainstorming how do we do better? How do we make sure we're there for the farmers? How do we ensure that we're not sitting in spots like this, that we are obviously in Mississippi and I'm sure other states as well. There is some good news, just very quickly. I think is important. I know not everybody's here, but one of the bright spots of the last year was us launching One Farmer, One File. It isn't specific to this case, but it is specific to the overall running of USDA in these local offices. That One Farmer, One File, we pivoted the Doge team late last spring to basically fix this insane IT system that USDA has. More than 1,000 contractors spending more than $1 billion, 500 systems stacked one on top of the other. It's no wonder that we're still in the dark ages when our farmers are trying to get these programs moving and funded. And so we launched One Farmer, One File in January. And just as an example, in 4 days, when we moved out the farmer bridge payment, we had 52,000 applications in 4 days. As an example, 6 months before, as we moved out the SDRP and the ECAP and some of those programs, it was 5,000 applications over 5 months. So 52,000 applications over 4 days versus 5,000 over 4 months. So my hope is that by moving into this current technology phase, never taking away the face-to-face, especially for the older generation of farmers, but as the newer generation comes up, we're going to be able to solve a lot of this with technology. But I hear you, and I keep telling everyone, send me these stories of you guys not getting done what you need to get done, and we will solve for it.
Great, thank you. And I had one other question about my Buy American Cotton Act that I'm so excited about. I know it really has nothing to do with this, but I think it could really be a game changer for many, many producers in this state, and I'll submit that for the record. Thank you.
Well, and if I can quickly say, I'm with you 100%. From a cotton state to our cotton farmers have just been devastated. And we talk a lot about corn and soy and soybean, all the things, but I feel like our cotton guys have been a little bit left out, and I think this is a game changer for them. I love your leadership on it. I want to do whatever I can to support it. And I think I've told a lot of the cotton farmers with the new Make America Healthy Again movement, I know we're talking a lot about food, but let's talk about what we're wearing as well. And I see a whole invigoration, hopefully, of that industry and bringing it back to where it needs to be.
Yeah, we don't eat cotton, but it is healthier for your skin to wear it.
It sure is. It sure is, and that's coming out more and more now. So it's a big important issue for ag. Yeah. Thank you, Cindy.
Food, fuel, and fiber. Correct. And I've seen some really great ads on buying domestic cotton. Some really good stuff. So good luck with that initiative. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Senator Hoeven. Welcome, Secretary.
Good
It is
afternoon.
so good to see you. I want to thank you again for coming to Nebraska in March. Just so appreciated when you came out and spent time to survey the Morrill wildfires that we had, over 800,000 acres burned, largest fires in Nebraska history.
Devastating.
To have you there sent a good message to the people and communities that are suffering. And I know your team has been working to get that disaster assistance out as quickly and efficiently as possible. For years after wildfires, we've heard such frustrations from producers. They apply for assistance after a natural disaster. That's very complicated, very time-consuming. They've shared with my office that they're required to use a specific size of T-post to receive federal assistance, but their area is completely out of it, those posts, due to the surge in demand post-fire. I do have a bill for that. We were able to get it passed last month by unanimous consent here in the Senate. As we are looking at so many of these programs, Madam Secretary, can you discuss how the programs and the FSA processes can be improved so we can get that assistance out the door more quickly, and are there ways that Congress can be more helpful in that?
Well, I think your leadership and focus on that, Senator, it was a remarkable day for a lot of reasons. That was perhaps one of the worst disasters in Nebraska's history, the largest fire in Nebraska's history, the 8th largest in American history. Because it was in more rural America, it didn't get the focus and the amplification that it needed. But my goodness, the devastation to our ranchers and farmers that were in that part of Nebraska is real. And talking about losing generations of cattle farms because they're not going to be able to graze because the land has been burned at least for 18 months or so. But also the pioneering spirit and the love of farming and ranching and of God and of country and of state was so inspiring to me. And in fact, yesterday, to your point, to get to your question, I've stayed in touch with all the farmers that I met. I gave them my direct email. I said, email me if you have any issues getting the funding, as these programs are moved through on disaster relief. So yesterday, I can't remember his name, but I got an email from a farmer that also digs water wells. And he said the funding's coming through to...
At the round table.
Yes. And he emailed me, he said, the funding is coming through to dig whole new wells, but we don't need to dig new wells. We just need new component parts. But under the current way the rules are written, the regs are written, we can't get that. And that's the kind of thing that sent over to Aubrey Betancourt, who's our incredible chief at the NRCS and working with a lot of these programs, that we can adjust on the, as quickly and nimbly as is humanly possible. So my understanding is that, and I've given carte blanche to our FSA executive director on the ground in Nebraska. You work 7 days a week, 20 hours a day with these farmers to get them what they need. If you're hearing differently, please let me know. But again, we've given our FSA leads in all of these states with the disasters, hopefully the ownership to be able to go out and make some of these decisions so they're not strung up in bureaucracy.
With our FSA offices, the office in Okolala, Nebraska, which is close to the closest city where these fires took place, it's closed. And so the Sydney office, which is several hours away, they're working with Okolala office, but that's something I heard from Nebraska Cattle.
We need to fix that. So the FSA office closest to those affected doesn't have staffing. Okay.
I know in the budget, there's a budget proposal from the USDA. It proposes a $241 million decrease in FSA salaries and expenses. And as you know, I'm all for working to make sure we're as efficient as possible, but I also want to make sure that our local Nebraska FSA offices, that they have that proper staffing so they can assist our producers. So how do we ensure that those offices have the staffing?
Yeah, we need to send, just like we sent a Tiger team into Cindy's, Senator Hyde-Smith's office in Mississippi. We need to do the same in Ogallala. And what I have tasked our Farm Service Agency, Richard Fordyce is a farmer from Missouri. He is one of the greatest leaders I've ever worked with. He and Bill Beam, who's running FSA, we've got 10 of our top team coming in next week to brainstorm on this. We have to make sure at the very front line that our farmers have what they need from these offices. And I realize it has not been an A-plus situation, and not just in the last year, but over the last number of years. So ensuring that we are reorganizing to make sure that that is the priority continues to be my priority. And I'm planning to spend more time on this issue this year, including visiting the FSA offices, understanding firsthand, getting monthly reports, understanding what the strategic plan is for all of these offices to make sure we're doing everything we can to do our best.
Well, I appreciate your attention to that, and if you could keep me informed
I will.
On what you're doing there, that would be helpful as well. Again, thank you for your visits to Nebraska, to the university. It's always important to be able to see the people that you work for.
Correct.
See them in their own homes, their own settings. So thank you, Madam
It makes all the
Secretary.
difference. It makes all the difference. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Again, Secretary, you've been very accommodative with your time. We appreciate it. We know you have a 4:15 hard stop. Final quick question on my part, and I think Senator Ranking Member Shaheen has one as well.
Absolutely.
There's $55 million in the budget for the restructuring. We're supportive, as you know, particularly as far as moving some of the folks out of D.C. and out into the rural areas. Just a quick update on how that effort's going.
Yes, so we announced the Forest Service reorg a few weeks ago, and that's going very well. This week, by the end of this week, we'll be announcing the next phase of the reorganization. We're finalizing that today, so I don't want to get too ahead of the teams, but I think it's all really good news. People are very excited. This next round will include some of the research work, which was interesting. We had some conversation on that, moving our researchers closer to the land-grant institutes, closer to where the actual research is happening, and the people whom it affects the most where it's happening. So we'll have very specific details on that. Senator, I'm so happy to call you. We'll give you a heads up before as we're finalizing that. But again, I think this is all really, really good news. Realize it's a change from the status quo, and sometimes that's often a little bit difficult and clunky, but our team has been extremely intentional and strategic in working on this over the last year, and I think you're going to be very happy.
Yeah, and we appreciate you keeping us updated on that.
Yes.
Thank you. Ranking Member Shaheen?
Thank you. I want to go back to my opening comments about the Bartlett Experimental Forest Research site, because as you point out, part of the forest reorganization has suggested that you're going to close a number of the 84 experimental forest research sites in the country. 2 have been announced to date. One is Bartlett in New Hampshire, the other is in Hawaii. But we have another one, Hubbard Brook, and Maine has 2 sites, Massabesic and Penobscot, that are both on the list, as I understand. I would just point out that 3 of the 4 most heavily forested states in the country are in New England. Maine is first, New Hampshire is second, and Vermont is fourth. Forests are really important to our economy, to the people who work in our state, and to our ecology. And the Bartlett Experimental Research Site has been collecting data since 1931. Hubbard Brook for over 60 years. I visited Hubbard Brook on Friday. That is research that we can't get back, and it's being done on site in those locations. So the idea that we can pick up and move that research closer to the University of New Hampshire, our land-grant school, is just not accurate. And our governor didn't know anything about this. I spoke to her on Saturday evening. She was as concerned as I am. She is going to be contacting you. I would hope that you would take a look at this again, because this is not something that can be replicated out west or at a land-grant university. This is something that has been going on for decades. That is information. I mean, at Hubbard Brook, they're the ones who identified acid rain and the impact of acid rain back in the 80s. So there is work here that we just can't reproduce anywhere else that is going to be lost if these closings happen. So I would just urge you to take another look at this aspect of that reorganization, because it is going to have a horrific impact on the research about our forests.
I will. A short answer of that is I will. All the governors were invited, and she probably couldn't make it. So, but I would be happy to brief her and you personally. So let's see if we can do that. I will say on the Bartlett, there hasn't been staff there in 3 years, and it's got about a $2 million deferred maintenance.
I understand that, but there hasn't been staff there. Part of the, and it's true of Hubbard Brook. I understand that you're
But I'm
looking
not
at
sure about
any
Hubbard
place
Brook.
that has fewer than 5 staff people for closure. Hubbard Brook has had more staff, but because of the freezes at the federal level, they haven't been able to fill the openings. It's not that they don't want to or they don't have people who could do it.
Yeah, I just know about Bartlett. I'll look specifically into Hubbard Brook, though.
The
I'll
same
do
is
that.
true of Bartlett. They would like to hire more people, but they haven't been able to because of the freezes.
Well, they haven't had staff in 3 years, so that goes before our administration.
And it's a problem with the previous administration, too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's fair. Thank you.
Madam Secretary, if you had any closing comments you wanted to make before we wrap?
You know, I just appreciate the collegial, respectful dialogue. I think that this is what Americans want. We were not going to agree on everything, and we're going to have disagreements, but I'm grateful. I think this is the way that our founders envisioned that we discuss disagreements and work together where we can. So I'm grateful to you, Senator, for Mr. Chairman, for setting that model in here, and you too, Senator Shaheen. Thank you, and really the whole committee. It's an honor to be here and explain what we're doing, and I'll continue to work one-on-one with everyone on all of these issues.
We appreciate that, and thank you for being here. Any questions need to be submitted by Wednesday, April 29th for the record, and we would ask for your response within 30 days. And again, thanks for being here. We're adjourned.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.